Hello, and welcome back to FPDM, or MCAF, the 10th annual edition of the Festival de Bande Dessinée de Montréal. I'm back for what promises to be a great conversation with Syan Rose, the author of Our Work is Everywhere, an illustrated oral history of queer and trans resistance. My name is Alyssa Favreau, and I'm a Montreal-based writer. So hi, Syan, how are you doing?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hi, how are you? I'm good. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So maybe to start us off, in case people aren't familiar with Our Work is Everywhere, can you talk a little bit more about the book?
Yeah, I have a copy next to me, so it's this guy right
So do
here.
I.
It's yeah, we're twins. Um, yeah, so it's essentially a collection of illustrated interviews, prose. There's some poetry. That is a collection of I think from 22 different queer and trans activists, healers, artists, organizers, friends, loves, just people, some who I do know personally and well, and some who I've never met before. And it's essentially just like a kind of a little snapshot of personal experiences, and I think that kind of come together to create a narrative of what's going on for queer and trans people in this time. Yeah.
I want to start off by saying that I really enjoyed reading it. In the intro, you call it part graphic nonfiction, part thank you note, part gay theory paper, part activist gossip column, and the rest is a surrealist dream. And I think that that's just like such a beautiful way to describe what I really appreciated as like an object. So how did this project start?
Thank you. I'm so glad you liked that little intro. It started basically. So I've been doing comics and illustration for about 10 years, and back in like 2014, I was doing my own writing, like original writing and illustration for different like different web comics. I was doing graphic journalism for truthout.org. And it was like, yeah, kind of journalistic writing. And I kind of was feeling like I wanted to shift towards doing more interviewing and not as much writing, like working with people to actually hear about their stories and illustrate them. And I was really inspired, honestly, by just conversations that I was having with friends at the time, just around, I don't know, like informal conversations, like in my queer community around like everything around. Like I just felt like so many of my friends and people I knew were trying to renegotiate and change relationships to power and harm and oppression. And that sounds really vague. I'll get more into it, but what I mean by that. But I think that basically, like, I was really inspired, for example, by just having chats with friends and how listening to how they would negotiate, I don't know, uh, non monogamy, for example, or anti racism, or like just the things that are going on in our lives. And I felt like a lot of queer and trans people just are visionaries who have really beautiful, special ideas about how to change this world. And so I kind of wanted to document that and uplift and like showcase the brilliance that exists within queer and trans communities, but not in a way that felt um, like not in a way that still felt very human, like these conversations are messy and complicated and weird sometimes. And I wanted to sort of bring the humanity to um, yeah, to all of that, to political issues and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, you bring together so many different stories, and it is like an ambitious work. And I'm wondering how long it took.
Yeah, it took. So I started it like my first interview in 2015, and I finished it in fall of 2021. It was actually supposed to come out in fall, but we didn't release it until spring 2021 because of the pandemic, which I actually think is such a blessing in disguise for me because I had all this extra time to get some of my favorite interviews. Actually, we have a section in the end of the book that's devoted, 3 pieces are devoted specifically to COVID, which I thought was really cool and special. And I think the fact that it took me like 5 years actually really shapes the intention of the book. I feel like I got to think through a lot of questions and really be intentional about the way that I wanted to do it over that time. I talk about this a little bit in the introduction, but I was a little self-conscious that, like, I don't know, things that I had created in like 2017 or 2015 wouldn't seem relevant or I don't know, like it wouldn't be as good or something because it was like 5 years old, like just with the whole internet culture that we have, like I feel like there is this pressure to sort of make things quickly. But I definitely got over that fear. And I think the fact that it took so long actually is like a testament to, I don't know, the soul of it. And it was sustainable for me. So I think that comes out in the work.
Yeah. Well, I definitely wanted to ask you about the COVID pieces. So maybe we'll just get right into that.
Sure.
Why did you feel the need to include them?
Well, let's see. Because right when COVID started, back in March of 2020, we had a conversation. This book was supposed to be finished in June of 2020, like the draft was supposed to be in. And once we decided to push it back, I had space for more interviews, and it just felt like I couldn't really talk about anything else. I felt like that was just the thing that was happening, and I thought it would be interesting to explore the way that COVID-19 was hitting people of different communities so differently, like even within the broader queer and trans world, and also from like just a personal experience, like most of the interviewees and writers that are included are people that I knew directly or like friends of friends. That's the way that I had been going was just through word of mouth. And so I just decided, even though I was really nervous to do it, to put out a call on the internet to actually like solicit writers or participants. And I thought that it would be a cool way to include people and also like, offer a paid gig for queer and trans people, because I felt like, there's just so many artists and gig workers, et cetera, and so many people had lost jobs or losing money and everything. So I thought that would be a cool way to connect with people. And honestly, like I expected to get, 10 responses, but I got like 150 responses. I could have made like a whole separate work just with that. It was so hard to narrow it down because there's so many, like, I don't know, there's so many topics that people wanted to explore. Like, I could go into that much deeper, but I felt like it was an opportunity to sort of like, I don't know, take myself seriously enough to actually, just believe that people would even want to be a part of it, which is something that I don't know, I talk about in the introduction. It was just like, gaining that confidence was a huge part of this, but also just like casting my net wider to not just people that I knew, for my community and everything. So, or by friends of friends or organizations that I'd heard of, because the reality is there's so much beautiful work going on. And, a lot of the times you can't, if you're not connected to that community, you won't know about it. And in particular, I did want to highlight stories from rural areas and also from from the south of the United States. And I feel like I didn't really do that enough, to be honest, in the rest of the book. And I felt like that would be an important narratives to prioritize. I've definitely received some feedback around the book that it mostly uplifts queer and trans people from major cities on the coasts, which is absolutely a valid critique. And so I was glad that I was able to include a few more voices from different geographical locations. And I felt like opening it up in that way helped with that.
Yeah. Well, how did you come to kind of the final list of topics to include?
I didn't. I didn't really. I actually, like, in the beginning, I was like, what is gonna be the thread? Like, what is gonna be the thing that, like, connects all these? Like, is this gonna even feel cohesive? Like, there's just so many, like, we are going from, like, mental health to astrology to, like, it's just, I don't know. There were so many different topics, and I decided that actually, by forcing any type of topic, or trying to impose something on the I don't know, on the interviewees, I felt like was just, it didn't really make sense, and I just kind of trusted
Mhm.
the process, honestly, that, like, actually the diversity of narratives is what makes it special and reflective of our communities, I think. So I think I had to give up the reins a little bit, let go a little bit on that, because I was really stressed that it wasn't gonna really flow. But now that I've actually, like, seen the thing, like, I actually feel like it does flow, and it feels like you just get to meet a bunch of new people and their experiences, and
Mhm.
sort of just let the topics come to you, and not try to figure out what the narrative or the thesis or the point is.
Mhm. Yeah. We have an audience question. What were the
Oh, I love
reactions
that.
to your book from readers or friends or anyone?
You know, It has actually been really, really special. A lot of people feel like they really resonate with the stories, and honestly, I don't even feel like I can take credit for that. The story, I think the pieces that really resonate with people are the ones that reflect their experiences. And I personally didn't write any of the text. I illustrated and compiled it. So I feel like the fact that, we're approaching so many different, again, topics, like you said, like racism and colonialism and ableism and joy and pain and heartbreak, and just so the whole gamut of good and bad and messy and fucked up and beautiful experiences. I felt like, there's something in there uh, that's gonna sort of catalyze a reaction for someone. Even if they might hate one of the interviews, they might really like another one. So I felt
Mhm.
like, I've received some really, really beautiful feedback, which has literally meant the absolute world to me. I cannot tell you, like, how special it is. I saw someone, like, some person that was posting on their Instagram that they took a picture of themselves reading the book with their dog or something, and they were just talking about how they felt like this book really was sort of, representation is a really weird, it's a weird concept, but it felt like it really represented to them their relationship to the queer community and things about their identity that they hadn't really seen in, like, mainstream publishing, because it was just people honestly, like, queer and trans people honestly talking about their experiences and not being tokenized, not being the only one, not having to speak for the LGBTQ community, like, just being like, this is what I'm struggling with. I have a hard time getting out of bed
Mhm.
sometimes, and, listening to Beyonce helps. So I think the mundaneness at times, um, I think, really speaks to people too, which is really cool.
Mhm. Well, that kind of leads to another question that I have, if I can just find it in this long list of things that I want to talk to you about. Um,
I'm chatty also. I'm so sorry. I will go. I'll just,
oh,
like, so please cut me off if you need
it's
to.
gonna be great. Yeah, I just the decision to have people's accounts appear in the text, as their own words and not using more like mediated modes of writing, was really interesting to me. And you've touched on that, but maybe you have some more thoughts.
Um, Sorry, what exactly is, like, you're saying, like, why did I choose just, like,
To
interview
just
style type of thing?
Yeah, instead of like taking interviews and then working them into and like doing more of the writing yourself.
Yeah, I just felt like that was not my place, honestly. Like, I just feel like, in the world that I would like to fight for and would like to see, I feel like self determination and self representation is the most important thing, honestly. Like, I feel like people really, really need to be able to talk about their own experiences, especially because I think that when it comes to writing about like what could be seen as political, I don't really see this as political, but political topics, like, you know, I think there's so much room for exploitation of people's trauma
Mhm.
um, when you're creating work that does orbit around things like oppression and identity. I think there is a lot of room for people to sort of like twist the lived experiences of people that have trauma and like use it for some other agenda of their own. And like I have my own experience as a queer person, and you know, it's very, very, very different than other queer experiences. And I think the point of this was not to say like, this is what queers think, this is what we're doing. Like, I can't group myself in a we with like people that have completely different experiences and, you know, around their race, their ability, their class. Like, and I'm not trying to speak for anyone at all. Like, I felt like that would be unethical and just not interesting. Also, I wanted to capture the nuances of people's voice and their experiences, and that does include voice too, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. We have another audience question. One reviewer wrote, "It's an inspirational volume for current and aspiring queer community workers to keep showing up to build a better world together." Did you expect those kinds of comments?
I don't know. I don't. It's hard for me to answer what my expectation was. I think I had to manage my expectations a lot. I don't know if maybe people who are listening can gather this, but I think I have some skepticism sometimes, or some like mixed feelings about like social justice literature or art. I don't know. Sometimes I guess maybe I'm just a little guarded. And I've seen the
Mm.
pain that has happened in, I don't know, social justice nonprofits or like in art projects and things like that. So I think that I just really wanted to go in with no expectations and not really have an expectation or a goal around uh, doing anything other than presenting my honest work, and then let people um, sort of interact with it the way that they wanted to. But at the same time, when I did see the piece like in its like actual finished form, because it's so weird that it was just like a series of files on my computer for like years. Like I was really pleased with it, and I did find it really moving. And I had a sense that maybe other people would feel that way too. And I just like, yeah, I really did want to. I mean, I wish I could have worked on this book for another 5 years. Like, I feel like I could have. There's so much beautiful work. I'm sure people in the audience that are talking, they're queer and trans community workers. They probably have amazing projects as well, you know? And I kind of like, the reason that I said in the introduction that this is partly a love letter is because I wanted to portray people in my queer and trans community as uh, the badass workers that they are, even if that work is literally just getting out of bed and surviving this cuckoo world. Like, and I wanted to
Mhm.
make illustrations that would like, I hate the word hero. I don't want to say that, but like some less corny version of that, you know, that people are actually
Yeah.
like taking on a lot. And so I wanted to really celebrate that. I think that this book is
Mhm.
a celebration.
Yeah. Um, so in one of the pieces, the one by the artist Flem, there's the line, "At the end of the day, the work I create is for me and me only." And I found that really interesting in the context of this work, because how do you balance making the art that you need to make, that you want to see in the world, with like actually getting it published and having it be this kind of more mainstream object?
Mm, that's really hard. It is such a balance. You know, I think that I really value being unapologetic, honestly. Like, I definitely had some questions about what kinds of publishers would um, want to publish this piece. And I mean, there was only one. Like, I applied to, like, maybe 50, and only one did. And, you know, and when I was talking to, when I was talking to publishers, I was definitely like wanting to make sure that they would be like down for publishing about, for example, sex work, and like sex worker activism. That was one topic that I thought that, like, I don't know, mainstream LGBTQ, or mainstream like literature the community might not be supportive of, which is fucked up. So I don't know. I think that I just really valued being unapologetic, and I honestly I did have to sort of contend with the fact that, like, there were moments in this process of being like, maybe no publishers will want to publish it, and that's a possibility. For me personally, I can't speak for anyone else. Like, for me personally, I do not intend to make money on my art, really. Like, I try to that's not the I have to make it sustainable for myself, but it's not my primary income, I guess. Like, I have been privileged to have other jobs, and I worked in the service industry for a long time. I'm transitioning into another career right now. And I'm not saying that, like, for artists that do art for a living, that is like amazing, and I applaud them for that. It's just like not something that I have the capacity to do, because I feel the need to be really unapologetic and also work at my own pace. Like, I'm not, after making this piece, I'm on a big hiatus right now. Like, I need a huge break. So for me, and also, like, I got my start doing zine stuff, like, I was like a zine person for many years, and no one really makes any money off of zines. I don't know if your question is directly asking about like, sustainability and money in that way, but that's, I guess, how I took the question.
That's part of it, a big part.
Yeah, it is exactly. And I think, like, I guess I don't even, I guess it is mainstream. The book is mainstream, though, because it's published in bookstores, but I hadn't really thought of it that way. I think that also, like, the times are changing, and I do think that, like, work that that centers, conversations about, like, queer experience, I think is becoming more mainstream in some really amazing ways and some weird ways. But I think that for queer and trans people, and for all artists, we should just keep being unapologetic, when you can be, and sometimes you can't be, and that's real too. But I encourage people to at least try.
We talked a little bit about how long the project took to complete, but we have an audience question that says, I read that you found the process too long. Is it true? And do you still feel like that about it?
I think that what I was I think they might be referring to, like, the part in the introduction when I was afraid that the process would take too long. Like, again, going back to that, like, people will lose interest in this type of thing if I don't, like, shoot it out quickly. And I think that, like, I felt myself getting impatient at times. Like, I was like, especially when I didn't have a publisher too. Like, there were many years that I was just doing this for fun and publishing little zines. And I don't know, maybe some people out there might have the zine version of this book, the unedited. There's probably lots of typos in it. But yeah, I definitely think I got impatient at times. But I just felt like, I have to at least try to send it to publishers. And then I was like, you know what? And if nobody wants to publish it, I'm going to move on to something else. But there was, like, a good 2 years during the publishing process when I really wasn't sure. So that was definitely hard, and hard on, and I'm sure that people who are listening can relate to this, of, like, when you're not getting that validation from a publisher, from, whatever, whoever you're trying to impress, it can feel like you have to be your own cheerleader, which is exhausting. And, I'm not really sure how much longer I would have been able to do the self-publishing thing with this piece in particular. Or, yeah, I don't know. So it's yes and no.
While I was reading it, I thought a lot about the book as this kind of like queer archival projects, and I often find myself drawn to those kinds of projects because of the interplay between, the kind of archival preservation aspect of it, but also there always seems to be some art involved. There's always just more than just documentation happening. So I guess I have two questions about that. One was like, what were you preserve, and also, um, is the art portion something you thought about, like what you were adding to the project through the illustration?
Can you repeat the first question? Sorry, I think my internet cut out for a second.
What were you trying to preserve or archive?
I think I was trying to archive the mundane on it. I said that a little bit earlier, but I think that like I wanted to preserve the regularness with which sometimes this work happens. Like some of the most badass like organizers I know, I feel like spend like a lot of their time like emailing or like like it's not like or even like some of the most profound work and some of the most profound revolutionary moments that I feel like I've seen sometimes happen like when someone's in therapy or like trying to change behavior of theirs or having a deep hard conversation like like it's just there's a I think sometimes with when it comes to like activism, I think sometimes like the very uh seemingly like visibly heroic moments are what is archived. Like I don't know, like who threw the first brick at Stonewall, like that, like those kinds of moments, which is amazing and important. And I also think that like hearing about I don't know, like I'm thinking about like one of the contributors wrote about a poem. Her name's Vivi Veronica, and she wrote a piece that's called "We Are All Elders," and she's talking about like the magic and the life-saving work of her trans elders teaching her how to put on makeup. Like that's very, very significant and revolutionary. And I feel like the those sometimes those small or seemingly small, maybe to the outside, moments are, I don't know, the most revolutionary to me in some ways, or are also revolutionary. Not maybe the most. It doesn't matter who's able to measure that, but are also important. And I feel like people who experience like trauma and oppression deserve to have their moments of being regular or being messy or being like not acting great sometimes and acting like a badass. Like I feel like everyone deserves that. And so I feel like that was, I think that's also, to get your next question, that's also reflected in the art too. Like some of my most favorite moments in the book are like honestly like little things, like this little like spilled nail polish, like or this there's a bowl of spaghetti I really like there's
It's a good bowl.
like there's like that exactly, like that. Look at that. I'm like, to me the thought of, I don't know, like I think I'm really into, because as like a comic artist, I don't really do like character design or anything like that. It's just not where my interest is. Like I think I'm really excited about like some of the objects and moments, like this hug that I'm like obsessed with. I don't know if people can see that, but like, that hug holds a lot of importance to me. And I wanted to archive that, I guess, if that answers your question.
It does. Yeah, yeah. Um, Something else that I kept thinking about in the context of like archiving, an art is creating something that kind of has lasting importance, kind of versus the disposability of social media content, which is how most of us consume art these days. Was that something that you were consciously thinking about while you were putting this book together?
Definitely. Like everyone who knows me personally knows that I'm like so bad at phones and like technology in general. Like I still don't really know how to use my iPhone, but I think I have like just trusting myself that um using pen and paper like was a really sacred act to me, just trusting that over, because actually I tried to make some of the art solely on my iPad, actually, not to get too geeky about art. I guess I'm in the right place for that, though.
I mean, this is the right
But like,
place for that, yeah.
right, exactly. There were times where I was like, oh, I bet I could work faster if I actually just like, rather than pencil drawing and then inking and then scanning and then editing, I could just like, which is how I did it for most of the project. But like in the last year and a half of it, I got an iPad. I didn't have a tablet or anything before that. It would work faster, but it just didn't have the same, my drawings didn't have the same soul. And that's not to say, for digital illustrators who can make their work look like some of the things I've seen out there, I'm like, that's amazing. I personally am not good at that. But so I think that like this book was also a celebration of slowness and, and doing things the way that you feel are sacred to you, even if it's like not the most glamorous or fast, or like I have a pretty mediocre social media presence. And I remember talking to my friend about it. One of the people in the book, Dusty, he's an incredible astrologer and lawyer, which is like the coolest combination ever. And I was like, oh, I see all these illustrators on Instagram that could just like poop out like 12 cool drawings a day. Like, how do they do that? And they use all the hashtags, and I'm never going to be like, maybe I need to be more like that. Like maybe I would get this publishing deal faster, or maybe blah, 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 And he said something so special to me over text. He was like, you know what, Sarah, you have been an artist way before Instagram ever existed, and you will be one when it's over. And I was like, you got some ancient wisdom in there, but I think it's true. Like, it's hard. I know, I'm sure, like, especially for me as a millennial, like, I feel like the Gen Zers, they're a little more like integrated into the social media stuff. Like it doesn't give them the same anxiety that I feel like me and my friends who are like in our late 20s and 30s are all like still confused by it. So I don't know, maybe people are having a more seamless relationship with the social media branding and stuff, but I definitely feel weird about it.
Yeah. And I so appreciate this book as an object too, like a three-dimensional IRL object, that I think there's still value in that.
Yeah, and you know what was so funny is that actually when the book got a few reviews, when it was just like a PDF before it actually came out as a book, it got reviewed by a few book reviewers, and the main feedback was that it was hard to read on a screen. Well, they didn't say on a screen, but it's hard to read. Like the handwriting is hard to read, which I don't disagree with. Like I could see that. But the thing is, to me, is that like, yeah, on a screen, you like, my work is not accessible on a screen at all. Like it is too much text, and there's too much detail, too much going on. So like, I love that this book is like big, like it's 9 by 12. Like you have to like really sit with it, and you can like, I was going to say zoom in. I don't think that's what you can hold it closer and like, and you can really like see it. You have to hold it to appreciate it. It doesn't, and that's why I haven't really posted, like before it came out, I didn't really post a lot of the images of it on my Instagram, because I was like, you're not going to be able to really feel it. It's not the same.
It's not optimized.
It's not optimized, right?
There's also this tendency for nonfiction comics to be like very straightforward in their art, very like grid based, and the journalism is really like driving the project, and the art, the illustrations kind of take a back seat. But you've got so much color and movement, and it's large in scale. It's not on a grid. Was that like, I mean, was that just how you do your art? Was it a conscious decision? What do you think it helps convey to your readers? That's many questions. Sorry.
Well, yeah, it's just, no, I totally get what you're saying, because it's something that I've been thinking about since I started like developing my style, when I started making comics in like 2010. Like I feel like it's because I think that a lot of the inspiration, like when I think of like who inspires me, it is a lot of like, there is, it almost is like there's these two camps. There's like the surrealist comics artists and like narrative artists that like make weird ass shit that you're like, how did they just meld? Like, how did I just jump from this moment to this moment? Like, where am I in time? What's going on? Like, there's this incredible book, and I think it's called Here. I'm so sorry that I don't know the name of the author, but do you know who I'm talking about?
Something
Can you?
McGuire, I think.
Yeah. And it's this, so you know the book. It's this incredible, like,
Yeah,
illustrated
vaguely.
book that just shows one room, and then it will cut back and forth in that same room from like 1921 to then cut to like 2005, and then cut to like BC times, and where like there wasn't even a house and it's just like native people walking around, and then cut to like 1980 when there's like a divorced couple fighting, and then cut to, like, and it's just, the colors are absolutely astonishingly beautiful. Like, there's not much text. It's just like that kind of like surrealist, like experimental style is like what makes me like foam at the mouth when I'm seeing that kind of stuff. But it's true that I don't really see that kind of style really like, interlaced with the radical politics stuff. I feel like a lot of yeah, I agree with your kind of thoughts around that. And I feel like, yeah, I just, again, wanted to make this stuff a celebration. Like, I want to, I wanted the art to just like match. I'm trying to find a picture to show people. I don't remember if I sent sent it to you all, but there's an interview, the interview with Annabelle and Syan about they're queer Chinese kung fu fighters,
Hmm.
practitioners, and like there's this piece that, can you see? Oh,
Ah,
I
there we
did
go.
send it to
Yeah.
you, of Siang literally in those hot platform boots, like doing the, and like all muscular and gorgeous in their like femness and their maskness and like all their gender fluidity gorgeousness. And I'm like, this is journalism to me. This is like this one moment of like, of a queer person. I don't even like, it's like a queer person in their full power and in their full gender, to me is the kind of moment that we should be documenting, and is journalistic, I guess. So yeah, I did want to bring the like the fun to it and the joy to it. And because I think that those kinds of drawings, I think, are also like what bring people in, and there's so much, and I wanted to put emotion in it. Like, I feel like these pieces are emotional, and for me, not saying like for anyone else, but for me personally, like the grid style doesn't like allow me to really capture like the feelings of what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah. And those are very, very good boots. I would like a pair.
I know. Same.
um, so something else that was great, and this was first brought up in Leah Lakshmi Piepzna's Samarasina's introduction or her foreword. Um, she
Yes.
writes, "Our work is everywhere, even as it's shitted on, despised, and erased. It's still here speaking." And in the context of this work, where you really refuse to see work as only what capitalism deems profitable, I was just very struck by that, by like the raising up of work that is not, a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah. And I definitely, I tried to kind of mention this in the book in my introduction, and I definitely feel like Leah and other people in the disability justice movement that is, happening now and has had roots all over the world and in our country. I guess we're in different countries actually, but in our
Mm-hmm.
area of the world for a long time. Sorry, I'm assuming everyone's in the United States, like a bad American. But
I'll forgive you.
yeah, thank you. But so like I think the refusal of work is definitely like, I see the way it is. I see the way that disability justice activists um, have really made those connections, that like the idea of work, and even within our like radical communities, like the uplifting and the glorifying of like the tired, overworked activist, for example, is like highly ableist. And that I think the point that Leah's trying to make there is that like work is actually living and creating and surviving, and um, a lot of times not getting recognition for like I don't know, I'm just thinking about the work that I see people doing that can have such an amazing impact is often not seen. Like, I don't know, just even thinking about I've had like people in my life who have cared for friends in a way that is more like family, like in queer, in queer community. I think that's a lot of people's experience. And I see the way that like, because, for example, we don't have a lot of access to like mental health care in this country. And it's like therapy is expensive and can be all these things like that work to take care of each other really falls on communities sometimes. And the person carrying the person on the other end of the phone or texting or bringing dinner or supporting someone in their growth is like not celebrated and not valued under capitalism. And I think that that's so unfair and really frustrating. And so I guess part of this is also to like really encourage people who are doing or people who, I don't know if people can relate to this, but I think I get really guilty and I have some internalized capitalism stuff where I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not like,
Yep.
da 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 da. But it's like, well, actually, let's like focus on the things that I enjoy doing because I know that I enjoy supporting people in my community. And what are the things that I feel like, what are my goals? What do I want to be doing? Let's just like celebrate that and make that sustainable for me. And as opposed to pressuring myself into or just feeling bad about some nebulous you're not doing enough in your art career or in your whatever, like I just think that's so harmful to people. And there's already so much shame and anxiety produced in this world, like let's do whatever we can to knock that down.
Yes, please. So I have a couple more questions, but we're coming up on our time. So if any of the viewers want to write in a question, we'll probably have time for that. So do that now.
So but cool I've always even, like I can't see, so I can't see people. So I'm like, yeah, I want to hear what people think.
It both feels a lot smaller, but also a lot bigger because people could be from wherever. I just did just before the panel with a bunch of different artists who are from Mexico and Chile and the States, and there were viewers from all over. So that was really fun. So kind of one of my last questions is, I've always found that at its best, queer culture kind of inherently resists the idea of a single narrative or a single experience that's just kind of built in. And even though we always kind of jokingly talk about what queer culture is, it's astrology. How do you see Our Work is Everywhere kind of fitting into that like resistance?
I think that ultimately, I think the way that it fits in is in its multiplicity. Like, I think that, like, if there is some sort of thesis, which I don't think there is, but like a big takeaway, I think, is just to celebrate and recognize and respect our differences. Because sometimes I feel like what is assumed about what queer culture is often white queer culture or queer culture that's centered around people with certain body types or who are thin or who are able-bodied or who are middle and upper middle class or whatever. Like, I think that and that's not to say that like all of those people in those categories I listen have their own queer culture. Yes, of course, but like I think we should be able to hold a little more multiplicity than that and respect the fact that like not all queer cultures might feel accessible to all queer people too, and and that needs to shift. And I think that I don't know if that's really like answering the question, but I do think that the idea of having like a decentralized sort of narrative that actually just like lets people be their full authentic selves, to me is the queer culture that I'm excited about.
So at the beginning, you, as a kind of last question, I know you're on a hiatus right now, but you said that you got a lot of responses and I'm interested to see more kind of snippets of interviews. So is it something that you'll continue with?
I don't, not in this way. I don't think in
Okay.
this way. I mean, I am open. I think that I'm taking the big hiatus that I'm taking is from organizing the project. If someone else wants to organize a collection of like some cool rad thing and wants to like involve me not as a decision maker but as an illustrator only, like an opinionated illustrator who has some thoughts. Like I think I that's like what I'm kind of excited about doing right now. I definitely think that in my future, I'm really excited about doing projects like this, like archiving projects and nonfiction, radical history, la la la, all the things. But yeah, for right now, I think that this project is kind of, it is where it is, and you know, it's always going to be part of me, and it's gonna, of course, inform the next thing that I do for sure. But yeah, I think that's what I feel right now.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for coming and for speaking with me. I had a really great time. I
Yeah,
think
thank
we're
you so
going
much.
to post social media and website information just so people can connect with you and follow you. I don't know if that is coming. Yes.
Yeah,
So everyone go and look at Syan's beautiful work.
oh,
And don't
thank you
miss the
so
next
much.
show. Don't miss the next show. It's happening right here at 5:30 in just a couple minutes. It's Let's Talk About Comics with Scott Snyder. So thank you again to all our viewers, all the sponsors, FBDM. Uh, I'm having a great time. I hope you are all too, and I'll see you later. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, thank you.